Let's talk money. Now, the Naira weekend, the first trading day of November, a big 1%, over 1% drop. Let's talk to Dumebi Oluwole now. She's the manager at financial derivatives company via Zoom. Dumebi, good morning. Great to have you.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so it's a 14 Naira 61 kobo drop in a single day. That's a big one. What do you think triggered this? Some say it's the Trump effect.
It's not too far-fetched, but I mean, there are other drivers. What the Trump effect is definitely doing is more of it's riding on market sentiments, on how short-term investors are viewing the Nigerian economy right now, especially when you look at the fact that they invest over the period of 3 to 12 months. And with how, Trump and pretty much the United States is really looking keenly at the Nigerian economy and their concern around the insurgencies and insecurity and their planned intervention. The markets are obviously pricing in similar impacts on other African markets and what that looks like and how that will shape up the Nigerian economy and even investor confidence over the next couple of months and weeks and even years, right? So we would say that there's some jittery in the market, and that obviously is impacting how market fundamentals are reacting to this. But beyond that, we still do expect the market fundamentals to solidify its stance in the coming days. And by market fundamentals, I'm speaking to the reserve position, central bank, also stepping in when necessary in the market, and obviously supply and demand dynamics really feeding into the FX dynamics for the Naira. So in summary, there is obviously some Trump effect going on, but that's more of a short-term market response to the Naira. We do expect that market fundamentals, including the FX reserve position, the central bank's orthodox measures, actually stepping in a couple of days to stabilize the markets.
And yeah, you did mention jitters there. At what level would we say maybe this is an early sign of deeper pressure in the FX market? How low would it go to get to that level?
I will say that this is just one of those things where the market is reacting immediately. And what that in itself actually tells us is that the true nature of Nigeria's
All right. Looks like Dumebi is frozen there. We'll try and get her back, but she was definitely explaining
see that.
Okay, I think I hear Dumebi speaking now. Dumebi, I lost you for a moment there. Are you back?
Yes, I am.
Fantastic.
I am.
All right, you can continue.
Yes, apologies for that. So I was saying that what this signals to us ideally is that the Nigerian FX market is now moving in tandem with actual demand and market supply dynamics, right? Which is a good thing. Because when you look at how, for instance, the South African rand, responds to global market responses or events, or even how the US dollar responds immediately to events like this, you realize that there is some market response. And of course, the market is transparent, and it's very easy now to dictate the pace at which the Naira will go, right, in the coming weeks or months based off of economic events that happen. So this is a good signal to us in terms of how Nigeria's FX market has grown over the couple of months or even the last couple of years. However, it also does tell us that short-term investors are clearly pricing in as a risk on the Naira, and it calls for central bank and the federal government to quickly resolve these issues so that we don't start seeing heavy capital flight that will definitely affect the Naira stability that we have seen over the last couple of weeks and months.
Yeah, because maybe I won't lie to you, I've gotten used to the stability of the Naira. I don't want to see any distortion, at this point. But let's look at, business activity now. The latest PMI data from Stanbic IBTC shows what 54 points for October. That's the highest in in 6 months. What we say is driving the resilience in the private sector activity, despite, the power outage issues and, some payment delays, according to the report.
Yes, yes. I mean, we did see improvements across several sub indices. So starting with output levels, we have seen that the Naira stability to some extent has been able to encourage output production across various private sector industries. And remember that the Stanbic IBTC index is also covering primarily small scale businesses. So this is somewhat good news in terms of how businesses have beginning to quickly recover from the incidences that happened between 2023 and 2024. So that's good news. They're also seeing some improvements in inventory stock up. And that again is one of the strong benefits of the Naira's appreciation and stability over the last couple of months. How that is encouraging businesses to, first of all, acquire goods, engage in transactions, and it's also reducing their blended rate where they're able to actually access dollars at or access forex, at a stable rate and at a cheaper rate, where we're not seeing the case of where it was before, that 80% of their forex was gotten at the parallel market and 10% accessed from the official sources. So that gap has been bridged, and that is obviously supporting output levels. And then again, that is even linked to their ability to procure more goods. That's the new orders sub-index, where there were also improvements. And certainly we're seeing some improvements in employment levels, though at a gradual rate, because some of these SMEs are still not yet able to, employ and retain people at the minimum wage or even higher. So, but primarily we're seeing some trickle down effects here, where they're able to employ but not as much. But regardless, employment levels are improving. And this is very significant because when you consider how much SMEs employ, and that's about 80% of Nigeria's workforce, and the contribution to GDP, which is over 40%, you do realize that this is good news. And one last thing to mention is that PMI is a forward-looking indicator to GDP growth. And with the steady increase that we've seen in PMI, what this tells us is that Q3 GDP numbers would likely come in higher than Q2, which is good news for Nigeria's macroeconomic improvements so far.
Right. Now we see manufacturing that led growth during the month. Does this signal a genuine revival in local production, or is it just a temporary boost from new product launches?
Well, you're not wrong in that product launches are supporting this, but we are also seeing, especially on the private capital investment side, we're seeing injections towards value addition, especially towards agriculture. So we're seeing quite a good number of investments to support technology-enabled agricultural production and value addition for food processing. So that somewhat is one of the pointers that we're having towards saying that manufacturing is improving. However, it hasn't moved the needle as much as we would like. So what that means is that there is still room for more growth. But good conversations, good capital injections are obviously pointing towards a further, boost in manufacturing, output growth, and specifically the value processing aspects of key industries like agriculture.
All right. So is this giving us direction, what to expect for November, December?
I mean, somewhat. What this points towards is an increase in supply towards the end of the year. Demand as well would also increase, but because we are seeing the Naira being stable, there's some concessions happening on the tax side that would likely, support businesses going forward into the year. So that ideally reduces it reduces panic buying, also reduces panic stockpiling from businesses. And so what that means is that the typical hike we would see in prices would not, that artificial hike that we would likely see at some point that we typically see towards the end of the year will not necessarily be the case. Prices might increase, but that will be that would largely be because there's an increase in demand. So supply as well would improve. We expect to see the festive season effect happen, but that sharp increase in prices that we'll typically see, that might be somewhat reduced, especially because imported products prices are likely to reduce.
All right, we'll keep tracking to see how much improvement we see with business activity in the country. It's quite favorable from what we've seen so far. Thank you so much.
Yes.
Dumebi Oluwole is the manager of Financial Derivatives Company. Thank you for coming on today.
Thank you for having me.
All right, we'll take a moment now and we'll check out what's playing out in the global economy. That's in a moment. Just stay with us.